CT imaging has generally been considered to be safe in patients with devices such as permanent pacemakers or ICDs. And yet in 2008, the FDA warned about possible interference of CT imaging with the proper function of some electronic devices, including unintended defibrillator shocks and reprogramming of ICD or PPM settings. Well, until now, this has not really been a well-defined area, not a lot of data available. In the May 6th issue of JACC, however, a look at the safety of CT imaging in patients with cardiac rhythm management devices. And I'm with one of the authors, Dr. Timm-Michael Dickfeld, MD, PhD, Associate Professor, University of Maryland School of Medicine and Chief Electrophysiology at the Baltimore VA Medical Center. I was surprised that there just was not a whole lot of information on this particular topic until now.
I think that was the same part that surprised us a little bit too. We started out when we saw the warning in 2008. We first were surprised because in the whole US and probably worldwide, this is not done routinely with a lot of specific EP attention. And then when we started looking at it in our two centers at the University of Maryland and the VA in Baltimore, we presented the data, I think, at the AHA or ACC around 2010. And it just took us a long time to get the manuscript together, as it often happens.
Now, we probably should back up and mention that the 2008 FDA notice that we had talked about has been updated last year, 2013. Where does the FDA stand on this now?
So we actually don't know that. The FDA, well, that is the true answer. We did not have a lot of interaction in regard to the FDA. They did not contact us, which is fine. But I do work actually with one of the FDA officers at the VA in Baltimore. He's kind of coming up on a regular basis to update, to continue his clinical skills. And in the way that he put it, which I think is maybe a good way, is to show how well the system in some way does work, because the FDA receive some warnings that cross their internal threshold. So they say this is information that we put out. The FDA certainly does not do it just because they can, but truly because there's concern on their side. Now, this puts the whole thing out in the mainstream. So we as a scientific community can see that, read it, then make an effort to gather more information. That is what we try to do. And then have now the data out there. And now the FDA, when they go back and reevaluate, they will have data on more than 500 patients to base it on. It was a surprise to us too that there was no other to be followed up in the conference and the literature otherwise, and it doesn't look like that other people are looking at it too much. There are some centers in the world, for example, we just got an email from the UK center where indeed this concern about interaction of CT and ICD is taken very seriously. While here in the US, I don't know about a lot of people that indeed would interrogate before and after a CT, but there are indeed centers worldwide that do that. So I think there is a shift, or hopefully we can help in a shift with daily routine, make things a little bit easier just based on some data the FDA have collected.
So anything specific about the paper that you'd like to talk about in terms of the data?
Well, I think one of the part that for us was a surprise, because our radiology have done that for 20 years, CT imaging and device, without knowing a lot about interaction. So we do not know what information the FDA had when they released their warning, but they certainly had very specific and maybe some stringent recommendations how to best address those. What we've shown is that in our two centers, when we looked at real live data, when we looked retrospectively, that we did not find any true indication that those original recommendations were required. Now, as a limitation, we kind of point this out in the manuscript as well, is that very rare occurrences, of course, we cannot really rule out. This was the largest study that reasonably could be done. Everything else would require a large database. Industry is not going to support it. So I think this might be the best in terms of real life data that we can get at this point, and probably will have for the time to come. The FDA, for some reasons, have a year ago updated their recommendation, in which they downgraded, especially their very specific recommendations about interrogating the device before and after. They have kind of weakened a little bit, which we feel from our data that this is very appropriate. So I think what it provides, hopefully, is the radiologists as well as the patients some assurance that what has been done in the past really seems scientifically to be, or to hold up to be, a safe way of going about it.
In your discussion, do you make any recommendations in terms of how clinicians should handle in the real world these patients?
Yeah, I think what the clinical basis is or what the clinical routine is in the US, I think that routine can be continued. It's really more a way of, there's a lot of uncertainty within the radiology community when those warning came out, where folks grudgingly, with like a bad feeling, continue to do what they were doing, but always wondering in the back of their mind, are we missing something? Are we maybe doing something not quite right? But there's just not an infrastructure set up, neither in larger hospital and for sure not in smaller radiology imaging centers where people would have even the EP expertise around to interrogate before and after. So I think what is it provides data that maybe this part that the FDA ruled out was based on important data that they had at the time, but at least in our experience it didn't bear out to result in a large and a significant clinical implications. But again, with the preface that this is on 500 patients and certainly something that would occur 1 out of 10,000 patients, it's nothing that a study like this could find out. Followed up with the comment that we will probably never have a study on 10,000 patients, and that will be probably, I would think, for a long time the only data we'll have on that.
Well, we have so little data, and so that's why it's important that if you have a chance to get to the May 6th, 2014 issue of JACC, please look up this paper and read a little bit more about it, because now finally there is some data. For Cardio Source World News, I'm Executive Editor Rick McGuire.